Hi, this is Carl with another Relax, Focus, Succeed video. Today I want to talk about the process of how you determine and document your core values. So, what are values? So values are simply the things that we hold to be important in our life. It's not hard to define 10, 20, 50, maybe 100 different values that you could maximize. There are some that are pretty straightforward, right? There's a lot of us that, hey, I want to maximize the amount of time I spend with my family. I want to maximize the amount of joy and love I have in the world. I want to maximize the amount of money in my back pocket, right? Some people want to maximize the amount of sex they get. Some people want to maximize the amount of time they spend on vacation, right? There's also things that you say, well, what's important? What's important in your life? Honesty, integrity, love, sincerity, right? For some people, it's knowledge and competence and education, right? For some people, it's simply being nice when you show up in the world. I have a long list of values, and there's a handout, so I'm going to put a link down below. But basically, in the book Relax, Focus, Succeed, I go through this list of values, and I have an entire chapter on helping to define these values. So download that list if you want. If it's useful to you, you're certainly welcome to take a look at that. Now, the thing is, when you think about values in your life, you have to figure out why it's worth documenting them. Ultimately, this is something that businesses must do and people absolutely should do. When I say businesses must do it, well, the easiest way for a business to define the values that they have for their company is for the owners to sit down and maximize the values that they have for their lives, right? So if the owners put a high value on integrity and honesty, well, integrity and honesty are going to be high values in the company, right? If relationships are important, then relationships are important. When you look at a list of values, there's probably 60 or 80% of them that you agree with just off the top of your head. How do you narrow that down? So this sounds like something that is simple and straightforward, and from one perspective, it is. But from another perspective, if you're going to take this seriously, then two things have to happen. One, you must take time, as much time as it takes to go through this process. And two, you then need to put it up on your wall, talk to people about it, be open about it, be public about it, and say, these are the things I value. Over at Relax, Focus, Succeed, I put my values out publicly and I try to live up to them. And I also use them to guide my personal life. It's what leads me down the path to a personal mission and a vision, and the fact that I want to improve myself and help other people improve themselves. I love doing that. It's what I find important in the world, and so it's what I do. The bottom line is, you need to figure out what is important to you. So when you look at the values, sometimes it's hard to say, well, there's openness and there's transparency. Those are both important to me. Somehow honesty is in there. What's the hierarchy? Which comes first, second, third, right? And then there's family, and then there's money, right? Like, where do they fit in these? It's a long process to determine the list of values that are absolutely core and central to your life. Now, here's the simple process. Start by printing out that list. And yes, I want you to actually print it out. I want you to go away from the screen. I want you to sit on your front porch or your back porch or some quiet spot in a park with a cup of coffee or tea or whatever. And I want you to go through that list, take a highlighter, and highlight all the values that you agree with. And again, that might be 60 or 80% of the list. Okay, that's not useful. So, all right. Well, then the next step is to think, okay, what are the ones that are really high priority for me, right? Because, for example, I think money is important and it's good and it's useful and it allows me to give presents to my friends and relatives. It allows me to build toys for my granddaughter, right? There's lots of good things that come with money. But if I look at many other values in my life, money is not a first tier thing for me. It's important, I need it, we all need it, but it's kind of a medium priority in my life. So again, that's just me. But I think most of us, when you get to a point where you say, okay, I know what's important in my life, having $1 more, having $5 more, you know, that doesn't motivate me to get up in the morning and dominate how I show up in the world and manage my business or my personal relationships. Your mileage may vary. You can do whatever you want. I'm not saying that this is what you should do. And that gets to a great point. You cannot have any guilt about choosing something over another thing. It may be that your work and your competence and your professional knowledge is so important to you that it is just slightly more important than your long-term relationships with friends and maybe even family. And, you know, the bottom line is, when it's just you on the back porch with a cup of coffee and the rest of the world isn't involved in the conversation, you should have no guilt at all about feeling the way you feel. You are who you are, and fighting that and resisting that and living by somebody else's values causes stress in your life. And you don't need that, and you shouldn't do that, and you shouldn't put up with that. And it might be that you want to work really, really hard to make your family first priority. Cool, great, absolutely. Nobody can argue with that. But you need to be aware of where they are in the hierarchy before you make that decision. For others of you, your family is the highest priority, and as a result, you might actually have work as a very low priority, or you might have hobbies as a low priority, or you might have your own personal free time as a low priority, right? Life is complicated and there are trade-offs. And so the idea that, well, we all have values and we all kind of sort of know what they are, well, that got you where you are, but your life can be better when you realize internally what actually makes you tick, and then proceed to balance your life around the things that are actually the most important things in your personal life for you. Now, we get values from all over the place. We get them from our family, from our church, from our friends, from our social media, from the people we just happen to hang out with for one reason or another. You know, you've heard about that you are most influenced by the 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, that's absolutely true, and it's because they have a certain way that they approach the world. Human beings are a little bit of we have a kind of a copycat mentality, and so sometimes we want to mold ourselves a little bit to fit in with the crowd. Human beings evolved to need a society in order to be truly safe and successful. So there's value in the crowd. There's value in society. And it's a legitimate thing that you should pay some attention to. But it's one thing you should pay attention to. It's not everything. Here's the basic process that I recommend. The first step is to print out 2 copies of the values. So the first one, you're just going to go through and you're going to highlight anything that's of any interest to you whatsoever. Okay. On the second one, start by literally only highlighting the values that are really high importance for you. Okay, and that might be 15, it might be 20. It's not going to be 80 and it's not going to be 90. So identify the values that are highest importance to you. And then I literally want you to set that aside for at least a day, if not a week. Have that paper where you can see it, where it's kind of in the corner of your eye, where you can't completely ignore it. But don't sit down and contemplate it. Don't work on it. This is not a process that you can do instantaneously in an hour. It's just not. Now, for me, I love to get up in the morning and do prayer and meditation in the morning, watch the sunrise, and go through that whole process, right? So that's a perfect time for me to then pick up that sheet and say, okay, let me narrow this down to maybe 10 to 12. And that can be very hard, right? Because now you've got, let's say you got 20 or 25. You have to look at each one of them in association with each of the others and choose which is higher, which is lower, which is higher, which is lower, and spend some time. And it might take you an hour to go through those, but if you're lucky, you'll identify 10 to 12, no more than 12 of those. And then set it aside for a few days and go through it again. Ultimately, what you want to do is to identify about 5 values that are the absolute highest priority values in your life for you personally, just between you and the piece of paper with nobody else looking. And then write those down. Hand write them down on a separate piece of paper. And that piece of paper I would put on your bulletin board or tape it next to your monitor, whatever. Make sure that you see it every day. You don't have to do anything with it. Again, just sort of let it sit there simmering just below the level of conscious awareness, but have it be in your environment so that every day you have some exposure to it. And maybe about a week later, I want you to sit down with those 5 values and I want you to think about each one of them and where they fit in your life. You know, I'm a big believer that you have multiple personalities and it's okay. You have a personality at work, a personality at home, personality in your love relationship, a personality with your friends, a personality with your children or your family, right? You've got the community, you've got different things, different roles that you play in your life. Well, where do these values fit in each of those roles? And that's probably at least a 1-hour meditation, right? And you can see how this entire process might take easily a month or maybe more than a month for you to go through. It might take you 3 months, right? But you've got to take it seriously because when you're done and you're confident you've identified your values, then you've got 5-ish values that you really can look at and say, those are my guideposts, right? That's where I know where I am. And that's how I know what's important and what's not important. And it can help you make easy decisions because very often when we're stuck with a decision, it's because we have competing values and sometimes the values that are competing are not our own, right? There's one value of maybe wanting to feel like everybody thinks you're important or that they think you're competent. Okay, that's cool. But if that's not your value, if that's not something that's super important to you, why are you considering that when you're trying to make a decision, right? What are the things that are actually important to you? And you can look up at 5 values that you've got written on the wall and you can say, well, it is on the list. Or it's not on the list. And that can help you make decisions. It can help you move forward. From there, there's a whole lot of exercises around, okay, how do I achieve a life focused around my values? How do I achieve a life that is balanced between work and home and family and so forth and so on and maximizes those values? Oh, now you got to go read the entire book of Relax, Focus, Succeed. The goal here is to simply identify these values, write them down, and begin the process. And if you only do this and never look at it again, it will still give you tremendous benefit in your life. The act of you physically writing down 5 values, underlining each one of them and saying, those are the most important values in my life, you have told your brain, your reticular activating system, pay attention to that. That's important. That is something I want to be aware of. And once you tell your brain something is important, it's going to come back to it again and again and again. And every time it does, I want you to take out that piece of paper and I want you to rewrite those values by hand. There's a physical activity of putting pen to paper and writing something out that deepens its awareness inside your brain. And so your brain knows this really is important. And do that maybe once a year. And those values will be imprinted again and again and again. And you'll not have to go through any process to remind yourself of what's important in your life because it's right there. This is a huge undertaking, and I know sometimes these things, people make them sound very simple. This is very difficult work. You might find yourself going through a personal crisis when you realize something that you have told everyone is important in your life for years is really just an acquired value that you got from society or friends or family that's really not important in your life. That's a hard thing to do, you know, but ultimately, as Plato reminds us, the unexamined life is not worth living. You know, Socrates would rather have been put to death than to stop talking about what's important and what's not, and how society should value the things that are important in society. So feel free to examine your life, go through that process, take it seriously. The really good news is you can't do it wrong. Nothing you do along these lines is wasted time. Nothing you do along these lines is something that will not bring value back to you eventually. So take some time, focus on your values, go through this exercise. It can be quite difficult, but it can be tremendously rewarding for you emotionally and spiritually. Comments and questions are always welcome. Please, if you like this, please subscribe to the channel and head over to relaxfocussucceed.com and sign up for my newsletter. I have a newsletter. It only comes out once a month. I try not to waste your time. It's always got a fresh article and some perspective on the world, as well as pointing to most recent videos and blog posts. So it's just a little bit every now and then, just a little taste of Relax, Focus, Succeed in your life. Let me know if you have any comments or questions. For Relax, Focus, Succeed, this is Carl Palachuk, wishing you the best of luck in everything you do.